The CoinWeek Podcast is brought to you by PCGS. Did you know that PCGS has encapsulated the 1933 Double Eagle, the world's most valuable coin? Recently, this rarity brought a record $18.9 million at auction. Then it was sold raw. What did the owner do immediately after buying it? Well, he turned to PCGS to have the coin professionally graded and authenticated. What treasures in your collection can PCGS grade for you? Visit www.pcgs.com to learn more. Today in the CoinWeek Podcast, we talk to National Numismatic Collection curator Dr. Ellen Feingold to find out what's happening at the Smithsonian Institution, how COVID impacted the work of her staff, and what future exhibits are on the way. All this next on the CoinWeek Podcast. Hi, Ellen. Thanks for joining me in the CoinWeek Podcast.
My pleasure, Charles. Thanks for having me.
It's so nice talking to numismatic people again now that things are starting to open up around the country. You guys must have had very interesting past year with the lockdowns and everything going on in D.C. How did you and the staff at the National Numismatic Collection either take advantage of the 2020 situation, or how did it impact you?
As with everybody, it was, of course, a shock, for us to all go home in March of 2020. We are used to working closely as a team and used to working closely with the collection. So moving to a completely remote work environment was a big change for us. But I'm really happy to report that we, of course, remain a close, tight-knit team and that we've been able to keep our projects going strong and come up with new and innovative ways to work with the collection and to share the collection online. Right around the time that we all went home in March, I was in the middle of writing the labels and the exhibition script for the new exhibition we plan to open next year called Really Big Money. And we had been anticipating that gallery, which is especially designed for children, to teach children about money, we had imagined interactive that was very physical in that space, an interactive that children would actually use blocks and move them around to make matches between clues and objects in the room. But the pandemic forced us to rethink that, both because we were concerned about whether tactile activity would be safe and appropriate for children and families with the pandemic, and also because we realized that we had some extra time to be even more creative and thoughtful and to explore new technologies. So we, together with Smithsonian Digital Studios and a number of tech experts in the institution, were able to redesign the activity to be an entirely touchless experience and also to create a version of it that can live online so that children all over the world can play the game instead of just those that visit the gallery. So it gave us some extra time and opportunity to think creatively, but of course we all miss working hands-on with the collection and are excited about getting back to that.
The Big Money exhibition, as you said, would be geared towards younger people, which is something the hobby has a very big focus on, to try to educate younger people about the science and fun of coin collecting and numismatics. You've had a few years now with the Value of Money exhibition, which was installed in a beautiful way and really represents some of these great rarities and very interesting numismatic objects very well. What sort of lessons have you learned from that exhibit that you would bring to this new exhibit? And what do you think overall has been the public's response to seeing coins on display at the Smithsonian?
The Value of Money is an absolutely wonderful space that we're really pleased has resonated with visitors and been popular among visitors of all ages. But it is, of course, a space that was designed to interest a variety of visitors and particularly to, as you mentioned, highlight some of the objects in the National Numismatic Collection. What I think I learned as a curator, curating the Value of Money, and then thinking about this new exhibition, was that the needs of young visitors can't be easily met with a sort of general purpose kind of approach. That children are shorter. They're smaller. If you want to create a case that is at a pleasing eye level for an adult, often it's a little bit high for a child. If you want to create a space that has mood lighting, that can be difficult for children who sometimes learn better or respond better to a brighter space with brighter colors or interactives where they can actually engage and have a different kind of experience that doesn't require them to read. So I spent a lot of time between 2015 and 2020 observing the value of money, watching our visitors, watching how families and children in particular interacted with the space. And while I think they all enjoyed the space and had a good visit, I felt like there was an opportunity to do something really special for children. And also thinking in particular about educators that bring school groups to the museum and educators in classrooms. How can we reach them with the National Numismatic Collection? Because I believe that our National Numismatic Collection has so much to offer as an educational resource. So I became a mother in 2017, and I became even more aware of the needs of young visitors and of the opportunity that the National Museum of American History has to reach them with numismatics. So I proposed that we take the biggest, most exciting, eye-catching, unexpected objects from the National Numismatic Collection, the ones that I could imagine kids' eyes popping out when they saw, and use them to capture the attention of young visitors, and then to link those to the learning standards and learning goals that teachers have for children, particularly in 3rd to 5th grade when money and economics becomes part of classroom learning and key concepts. And then work together with educators at the museum and with the collections team to bring that together into an exhibition that has content that is written for children, cases that are designed with them in mind, and interactives that are meant to reinforce the concepts that we teach through the labels and the text in the exhibition. So I think we've created something special, and with the extra time that we had last year, we've had even more opportunity to revise and figure out how we can reach visitors, young visitors and educators online. We have a new website, a really big money landing page that has 4 learning labs, which are learning modules that are designed for different grade levels using the objects and the content from Really Big Money, and also a Match the Money interactive, which I mentioned can be done online or will be available in person, and a number of other resources like a video called History Time that focuses on Quetzalbird tail feathers, which are part of the exhibition. So I think I learned that children desire interaction, that the way you design a space can make a big difference for a child, a young visitor's experience, and what I knew going in was that the National Numismatic Collection had the right objects to capture their attention, and that if we had an additional space to do that, we could give them something special at the museum.
Are you able to maybe tease out an object or two that you would think would make a very good candidate for the new exhibit?
Yeah, absolutely. I can share a few that we certainly intend to include. The Quetzalbird in the National Numismatic Collection, who we've lovingly nicknamed Fred over the years. His long tail feathers were used in exchange among the Mayan and Aztec people for particular types of tributes and other forms of community payments. And that object, when we tested with young visitors, when we were able to do some testing prior to the pandemic shutdown, really resonated. It brought out lots of interesting questions among particularly the 3rd to 5th graders that we tested with. And that object that has kind of become the iconic object of the exhibition and the inspiration for the animation that comes at the end of the Match the Money interactive. So that object is particularly fun and memorable. We also have a large copper Swedish plate, large stone money from the island of Yap, and we have a coin hoard. So when we talk about large, we don't only mean large in size. We also can mean large in quantity or large in denomination. So we have a Roman coin hoard that will be arranged in the shape of a Roman emperor's head. And we have some of the largest denomination notes and coins ever created from post-World War I hyperinflation in Germany, from Zimbabwe and from recent hyperinflation in Venezuela.
So basically, you're teaching children what happens when economies go bad.
We hope to use hyperinflation as an opportunity not to teach specifically that concept of inflation or hyperinflation, but to teach children about how money can be a powerful clue for understanding not just history, but about what people would have been experiencing, about hardship, hunger, scarcity, and to help, cultivate empathy in our young visitors in addition to teaching them concepts.
So I'm sure that the Smithsonian has some pretty good insights into the demographics of its visitors. What percentage of the visitors that come to the museum every year is the target demo for exhibits geared towards younger people?
I don't have that data at my fingertips. I wish I did. But what I can say is that we know that young visitors are a very important group among our visitors at the museum, and we know that we can serve them better. So one of the goals that our director Hartig, has set forth for the museum in the coming years through our strategic plan is creating more content, more exhibitions, programs, and online experiences for young visitors and families. We know that we can serve them better. We know that when we create opportunities for them, they come and they benefit from it. So our goal is to continue to do that, to build on the interest that families and children already have in the National Museum of American History. And my goal as curator of the National Numismatic Collection is to work together with the numismatic community to inspire that next generation of numismatists and to give children maximum access to their National Numismatic Collection.
Well, I can say as a child of Virginia that it was almost an annual tradition for us in school to make our way up to D.C. to visit one of the many great museums there. And these memories still resonate with me. I can still remember the first time I saw the Air and Space Museum or the giant American flag at the National History Museum or the dinosaur bones. You don't forget these experiences. So I would imagine there are children that have the same memories about some of the great exhibits that are currently on display. And I think there's a children's computer exhibit right across from the Ralph Baer installation, right? So that always seems busy to me every time I come up.
Our young visitors love when we create exhibits for them. And one of the privileges that I had with working on the value of money was that it opened alongside a number of other spaces in what we call One West, the first floor, the west wing of the museum. And I got to watch, as our exhibit opened and as the exhibits around the value of money opened, the enthusiasm and the energy, and I loved seeing children realize that there are spaces for them, and I wanted to create something that was for them too.
So where in the museum will the Big Money exhibit be installed?
Yeah, Really Big Money will be in what's called One East. That's the first floor of the west wing of the museum. So the other side of the museum from where the value of money is, but on the same floor. For visitors who previously came to see stories on money, it's physically in that same location, but that space is being, completely renovated and updated for our new Really Big Money show.
And when do you think it'll debut?
We are currently anticipating opening in spring of 2022, so this coming spring. We hope that that's early April. Of course, with COVID, our timelines do shift, but we're optimistic that we're looking ahead toward a spring opening, and we have already started to put content online, and we'll continue to build that over time as well.
Has any other exciting work been taking place with the collection? Any further digitization efforts or alterations and updates of the Value of Money exhibit? If somebody were to make a trip now, is there something new and exciting for them to see if they've already been?
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to working on Really Big Money remotely, my collections colleagues and myself continue to work toward digitization and enhancing our catalog entries for the National Numismatic Collection objects in the museum's collection database. As you may recall, Charles, the year prior to the start of the pandemic, we were engaged in a mass coin digitization in which we digitized about 25,000 objects in 6 months. and that involved the digitization of the entire collections of Lilly, the Josiah K. Lilly Jr. collection, the Paul A. Straub collection, and the Grand Duke Georgi Mihalovich collection. These three iconic collections have been, largely inside the vault, and for many years were inaccessible to researchers physically, and of course have always been inaccessible digitally for the most part because they've never been digitized. So that mass coin digitization literally wrapped up the week before we all went home due to the pandemic, and our collections team has been able to finish up the work remotely. So all of those collections are now freely available online, and we hope that people will start to use them and teach us about them because, of course, they are rich and diverse. Lilly and Straub were, of course, global collections, and Mihalovich is an incredibly deep and rich Russian collection. So that digitization, fortunately, has been completed. We have carried out two what we call research-led digitizations over the last couple of years, one that wrapped up before the pandemic, and one that we were actually able to wrap up recently, carry on during the pandemic remotely, and then more recently with some in-person work. And those involved digitizing the West African currency collection, and now more recently our South African currency collection. Both of these are relatively small compared to Lilly or Straub or Mihalovich. The West African collection is about 880, and the South African collection is about 750 objects. But both are incredibly rich and diverse and fantastic ways to explore the history, not just of the countries in West Africa or South Africa, but of the history of imperialism and decolonization and nationhood on the continent of Africa. So in partnership with a colleague at the London School of Economics and also more recently with a colleague at the University of Stellenbosch, we have carried out a process in which myself and these research colleagues have been heavily involved in creating updated catalog entries that provide 21st century descriptions based on recent research and literature of these objects, as opposed to categorizing them as primitive or odd and curious, that's outdated language. We've offered a new, we hope, more accurate, more thoughtful interpretation of how to talk about these objects, and we've even uncovered new things about them and published some articles. So the digitization is carried on, but also the research and the rich enriching of the catalog records have carried on too.
How does a collector access these articles and see the digitized collection?
We hope to make it pretty easy for them. The National Numismatic Collection has its own website that branches off of the main American History Museum website, and that's americanhistory.si.edu/National Numismatic Collection. And there, if you go under the collections page, you can link to any of the sets of objects I talked about. So the Lilly set, that's 6,100 or so objects. The Straub set, it's about 5,600 objects. The Mihalovich set, almost 13,000. So if you wanted to browse the collections that way, also, of course, the West and South African collections and our earlier digitizations of East Asian coins and Chinese banknotes, all of those are accessible through the collection portion of the National Numismatic Collection website. We also have a page about galleries and exhibits that not only links to the main gallery page, but also to blogs and articles that we've written or published about those galleries and the stories that the objects in those galleries can tell. And then we link out from there as well to articles like the South African article when there's an object that appropriately would connect with the article. So we've tried to use the National Numismatic Collection website as a sort of clearinghouse for all the different things that we do, and to make it simpler for online visitors to get to numismatic content rather than having to go through the main National Museum of American History collections page.
Well, I think it's a great benefit for collectors to have access to not only these great collections and this great amount of history, but also the expertise that you and your team bring to bear. And in regards to the new Big Money exhibit, it's definitely something that if you're in the hobby and you want to support the future of it, that you should support through donations and make sure these types of exhibits can be put together. So many people walk through the National Museum that you really are just investing into the future of the hobby. So how would you suggest somebody make a donation to support the cause?
That's very kind of you, Charles. We have a Friends of the National Numismatic Collection group that was founded in 2015, following on from the tremendous support that the community provided for the creation of the value of money. It was clear to the museum that group wanted to continue to work collaboratively in order to make the collection more accessible, more relevant, and to together create and cultivate that next generation of numismatists. So the Friends group is an annual giving group, and that's one way that people can support the work of the National Numismatic Collection. We also accept individual donations, and our development office at the museum can answer any questions that anyone might have about supporting us. We've had individual donors support individual projects as well, and that has allowed us to not only do great work and make more of the collection available to the public, but also sometimes learn from the people who are supporting us. Often they have a specific interest in the part of the collection and can help us further interpret and more creatively and more thoughtfully share the objects that we have.
Well, I do hope people check that out and contribute. Ellen, I'd like to thank you for coming on. Not only are you one of the most talented and most knowledgeable people in the hobby, you're also one of the nicest, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
It's my pleasure, Charles. And I do have a couple more minutes if there's anything else that you wanted to ask. I really enjoy talking with you, and I'm always happy to talk to your listeners.
Sure. I know you couldn't make it to the ANA World's Fair of Money last month, but do you and your team have any idea if you'll be attending future coin shows?
We do hope to make it to Whitman, the Whitman show in Baltimore in the fall. I'm really hoping circumstances and institutional policy allow us to be there because I, like everyone else, am anxious to get back out there and anxious to see everybody and share the good news about the work that we're doing and continue to learn from the community.
I very much look forward to having the opportunity to see you in person again and maybe stop by the collection and do whatever projects or even research you might have time for.
We look forward to welcoming researchers again. The institution is not yet at a phase of reopening where we're permitted to have research visitors come to see the collection. But I do want to remind your listeners that the Howard F. Bowker Research Room is there, and as soon as it is regarded by our institution as safe for us to have visitors behind the scenes, we are extremely committed to continuing to use the Howard F. Bowker Research Room to enable people to do, in-person, hands-on research with the collection, in addition to what they can do online. We hope that those two things, are mutually impactful and beneficial, and that people will return to the museum and continue to do research on the collection. At the end of the day, this collection belongs to everybody, and it's really our job, first and foremost, to make it accessible and share it. So please keep that research room in mind, and when it's safe and when we're allowed, we are very excited to welcome visitors back.
All right, great. All right, Ellen, I think that's good, and you have a great rest of your week, and thank you for coming on.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, you take care. Stay well.
You too. All right, take care. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends. Remember, you can download every episode of the CoinWeek Podcast for free on the iTunes Store, stream it online on our YouTube channel, or on CoinWeek.com. For CoinWeek, I'm editor Charles Morgan. Until next time, happy collecting.